What the hell is happening with housing prices? Why does it feel like the housing prices in Texas are broken? Some prices are up, some prices are down, and it feels like every city is living this different reality. Well, today we are actually breaking it down, starting with the big mess that is the US housing market, going into the clues that Texas is leaving, and then diving into each major city to figure out why no one can actually get their story straight. Towards the end of this video, you'll find out exactly what you should do, whether you're planning to buy, sell, or just try to survive all of this madness. If you're new here, my name is RK Rossos with the Community Warriors Real Estate Team, and we've helped hundreds of people find their next move here in Texas. And if at any point, whether it's in this video or another video that you watch of ours, if you want a free, tailored game plan for your next real estate move, just click the link down below whenever you're ready. So let's recap things first. First, as you guys know, the home prices exploded in 2020, in 2021. Then interest rates spiked, demand cooled off, and everyone kind of anticipated a major crash to come. Except it really didn't. Instead of home values tanking, according to the National Association of Realtors, the US housing market just this past month actually saw its strongest month since February last year. It doesn't really make sense, right? If prices were supposed to drop, why are buyers still jumping in to keep the prices where they're at? So I'll say it comes down to three key factors. One, the mortgage rates didn't really drop as expected, but they also didn't climb much higher at all. They really just sat exactly where we're at now over these past couple of months, which is just like the mid 6s to 7s, and everyone just got used to it. So that's the first thing, mortgage. The second one is that housing inventory is still tight across a couple of markets. Even though there's more homes available compared to last year, there still is a shortage of affordable homes across the board. And the third thing is the economy didn't collapse. You guys can see here that the US labor market is doing well. So when there's jobs, people can still buy houses. So that's kind of where we're at and why things really didn't crash. So let's talk about Texas. What does it mean for Texas though? Because I know each state operates differently and independently of the entire US economy. Is it doing something different? Well, here's the thing. Yes and no. Texas real estate kind of plays by its own rules, and it always has. According to Texas A&M's TRERC's 2025 forecast, Texas is actually outperforming and outpacing the US economy across a number of different metrics. And this is going to tie with how home prices react. Now, here's what they are predicting. Now, the first thing is that the Texas economy will grow faster than the rest of the US. So the state's GDP is expected to rise 3.3 to 3.7%, where you compare that nationally, which is about 1% lower than that. On top of that, they're anticipating for jobs to grow too, another 1% above the US economy. On top of that, it also seems like they're predicting that the population to grow another 1 to 1.4%, which includes more housing demand. And across all of Texas, they're still anticipating about 340,000 homes to sell and still an increase in price to 350K. But what does all this mean? What are we predicting? Well, we're predicting, or they're predicting, that Texas isn't really immune to this market shift, but that demand is not disappearing. The economy is still growing, which means that they're not anticipating the housing market to fall off a cliff. But here's the catch. Not every Texas city is moving at the same pace. Some are stabilizing, some are seeing price drops, some are increasing. It's a little confusing. So let's break things down city by city so you can see that Texas is not just one big real estate market. You're about to see how different these places really are. Let's talk about this market here. Austin. Austin is the one market that is experiencing that shift that everyone is thinking is coming to everyone. Is it that they are the first domino, or there's just some other factor? Here's the thing. Austin and its surrounding areas, you can see here that home prices just this past month had dropped 4.7% year over year, bringing the median price down to $409,765. And it may not seem like a massive drop, but when you pair that with what's actually happening on the inventory side, it tells a bigger story here. So you can see that new listings are actually up 16.5%, which means there's a lot of sellers jumping into the market, and the months of inventory has climbed up to 5.6%. Now, when you look at months of inventory supply, the higher it is above 3 months of supply, the more it gets into a buyer's market. This is actually the most buyer market leaning market. So what does this mean for my Austinites or people looking to move to Austin? If you're shopping, you have much more options available. You've got a lot more negotiating power, but a lot of the sellers in this market are really having to adjust. This is the only one that we're actually seeing these prices really have to come down. But does it mean that Austin is cooling, or does demand come back later this year? Now we'll talk about the potential warning signs about this market that can really change things. But before I do that, I want to talk to you guys about the Dallas Metroplex area. What's going on with Dallas? Unlike Austin, Dallas actually hasn't seen a major price drop. In fact, prices for Dallas are actually up 1.8% year over year, with the median price sitting under 400 at 389,900. But here's where things get interesting. Even though prices are technically higher, inventory is soaring. I mean, it's actually pretty crazy. So there are 26,888 active listings in Dallas, which means that there is a 40.4% increase in listings from this time last year. This is the most inventory growth we have seen in years. And if this keeps climbing, sellers are really going to be forced to cut prices just to compete. We're not really there yet, and we haven't seen that in the numbers, but the Dallas area really might be the market to watch to see if there's any major price reductions and to see if it's the second domino in Texas to follow Austin. So what does it mean for my people in Dallas, or looking to move to Dallas, or looking to sell in Dallas? Sellers aren't slashing prices yet, but they're also not selling as fast as they used to. So if we start to see price cuts, it's likely going to cause a chain reaction to see much more price cuts across the board, just because there's a ton of listings. This is definitely one of the markets to look out for when it comes to prices, because it might follow Austin, or it might still continue on this trend, because, I mean, you see it here, prices are still increasing, so demand still might be there for Dallas. Just watch when you see on the market for price cuts. That's going to be the big thing for my buyers and my sellers out there. So Dallas is on this kind of thin line on the fence, waiting for something to push it one way or another. But let's shift gears here and let's talk about San Antonio. So San Antonio's housing market isn't crashing. In fact, I'd say it's actually doing really well compared to the last two that we just went over, but it is still kind of slowing down in a little bit of a noticeable way. So prices are up 2%. So this is the highest price year over year increase compared to the other ones. The median price is actually up to $295,475. That's honestly still incredibly affordable when you compare it to something like Dallas, which is almost 400K, and Austin, which is over 400K. So by being one of the more affordable cities, it becomes a bit more resilient compared to the other ones. Now, creeping into Dallas territory where inventory is climbing, there are now 13,680 active listings, which is 15% higher than last year. And that means that homes are sitting, buyers have more choices. San Antonio is not really seeing a ton of price drops just yet. Honestly, I think it's due to the affordable range, and it still might just be a solid place despite this higher inventory. Now, let's talk about a similar market to San Antonio, which is going to be Houston. Houston's market is another balanced market in Texas right now. And I'm not just saying that because I do business out here in Houston, okay? I literally gave y'all all the numbers for every single one of the other ones, so y'all know. So don't come at me, all right? The median price here is up 1.6%, which would be slightly lower than San Antonio. The inventory is up 26.3%, and this is actually crazy because there is 47,864 listings, which is by far the most amount of active listings out of all of these different markets. If you add Dallas and Austin together, it still doesn't combine to equal the amount of properties in the Houston metropolitan area. So I think that's another thing to look out for. But here's another really interesting story. So even though there's a ton of listings, the inventory is up. What I saw here is that the luxury market is still booming here. So houses that are $1 million and up, the sales are up 20.7% in Houston. I'd say that Houston is holding steady. You know, the prices are still coming up. The increased inventory is a little bit scary, but with the certain segments of our market still on the rise, I think it's still a good sign for our market. But the real question is this stability real, or are we just kind of delaying a big shift? And that's not just for Houston, but I mean Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. Are we going to follow the same story as Austin, or are we going to stay this same path? Because even though prices are not slashing yet in most of our major cities, there are still a couple of major warning signs that could honestly change everything about this. So let's talk about the cracks in the foundation, pun intended. First, interest rates. So a lot of buyers assumed that mortgage rates were going to drop significantly in 2025, but so far they really haven't budged at all. Like I said, these rates are sitting around 6% to 7%. A lot of people are just sitting on the sidelines waiting for these rates to go below 6%. But that really hasn't happened yet. Meanwhile, sellers who locked in those ultra low 3% rates don't want to move, which is actually keeping inventory lower than it should be. And even though we see these insane increases in inventory, 20%, 30%, 40% for Dallas, we still have low-ish inventories. It's a tough spot to be because if rates lowered quickly, I mean, prices will skyrocket. Again, we're going to see a repeat of 2021. But if these rates increase, I really think that prices are going to tank. So wherever these rates go, the market will follow. And there's a reason why they've held them firm, because I'm confident that they have tried to look at these different scenarios and see what would happen and realize we are skating on this really thin line. Then there's affordability. So even though Texas is still, I'd say, a relatively more affordable state, and some of the cities like San Antonio and Houston are relatively more affordable than some of the bigger cities like Dallas and Austin, the reality is that home prices across the board have outpaced wage growth. First-time home buyers are still struggling to find an affordable home, and even though prices are not skyrocketing like they were a couple years ago, it's still not exactly cheap. And this is the last major issue. And I think this is going to be the most important one when it comes to warning signs, the job market. So overall, Texas is still increasing in jobs, but if at any point this slows down, I can guarantee so will our housing market here. I want to take Austin as a very big example. There's articles and articles of these people losing their jobs, mainly within the tech industry. And tech layoffs in Austin are huge. And I guess that these layoffs are one of the big reasons that prices are actually down in this market. So let's say in Dallas, there's layoffs in that market, prices are probably going to go down too. So when I look at things, I wonder, is Houston kind of an exception or the next to fall? So Houston is in this interesting place. Prices are technically up, but only slightly, 1.6% year over year. And on the other hand, inventory has exploded. There are more homes for sale now than in many previous years, which means buyers should, in theory, have an upper hand. In our last video, we mentioned the forecast for the jobs in Houston this year.
You can see here that healthcare, construction, admin, manufacturing, wholesale, oil and gas, real estate, education, arts and entertainment, every single sector other than information is an increase in jobs.
And just like I believe the job market is really a big factor of why it's affecting Austin, I think it's the big factor of why Houston is going to be very resilient. We're still forecasted to have a ton of jobs across a couple of very mixed sectors.
They are actually projecting that 71,200 jobs are added in this next year in Houston. And keep in mind, there were 62,000 this past year, and they're projecting that they're going to be even more.
So there's a lot to insulate Houston. This is the main thing. So I don't think that the market is going to tank or prices are going to take a hit. But what we are seeing is that there's certain markets that are going to do better, even in here, certain price points that are going to do better. Luxury home sales increasing 20.7% is wild considering affordability concerns, but I believe that market is still going to stay the same. That tells us these higher end buyers in our market, whether they're relocating or just moving up, are still out there looking and still kind of fueling this market. But the lower end of the market is struggling. Anything 250 and under, you can see here that sales had decreased. So it's likely we might see price reductions in those ranges. Home prices under 150 almost disappearing. What we're going to see is that our numbers are going to be a little difficult to track here in Houston because we're going to see a $1 million house appreciate at 2-3% rate, and that may skew the numbers when we see a 250K house stay flat, maybe drop down, who knows. But either way, one of the things that we can say is that there's going to be some negotiability for you as a buyer, or there's going to be some adjustments that you're going to have to make as a seller depending in the price ranges that you're in. And I believe that we could still say the exact same thing for a market like San Antonio as well, because they're following a very similar trend as us. So let's get into some action items. Specifically for my buyers, like I said, there's going to be some negotiability for you depending on where you are. This might just be your best shot at getting a deal for a while. A lot of homes are sitting on the market for a lot longer. There's a lot more inventory across the board, no matter what city you're in. So even if the prices are increasing or if they're like Austin and decreasing, it does not matter. You will look at a house in one price range, and I can almost guarantee you that you're going to have 10 other houses, most likely in that market, they're going to be very comparable to that. So going into it as a buyer, you can be a bit more aggressive with your negotiating. It takes a good agent to be able to do that. You may be seeing homes that have been sitting on the market for longer than 60 days, longer than 90 days, and there's a good chance you can get it under asking price for them to cover a lot of your closing costs, to help you lower your interest rates. These are things that we can help negotiate and help you guys structure. And really the one thing to watch out for as a buyer right now are mortgage rates. And if they start to drop later in the year, I can argue that it would be a good thing for a lot of people. But what I think is really going to happen, if they start to drop later in the year, more buyers are going to jump back into the market, more competition is going to come, and things are going to be much less negotiable for you as a buyer. Honestly, I'm not trying to hard sell you. I just anticipate that this is going to happen. But what we're seeing now, we're having a lot of our clients get $5, $10, $15,000 paid towards their closing costs, where they're coming to the table with only their down payment. We just got a client with 5.625% interest rate because the seller is paying for all of their rate buy downs. It's crazy, right? Rates are like 6.5%. So these are things that are happening depending on the type of negotiations that you can structure. And these aren't things that you'll see posted just on the MLS. These are things that you're going to have to get with an agent or with a team or someone knowledgeable in this kind of space to help you out and structure for you. Now, if you are a seller, I'm just going to be honest with you, it's a different story. If you price too high, your home is going to sit. If you price where you're at, there's still a potential. If you price where the market says you should be at, there's still a potential that you're going to sit. The reality is there's a ton of competition. There's a lot of inventory. And even if you are priced well, these things take time and you might need to price even a little bit more aggressively. I want to take one of our clients as an example. So we priced this home well, but it just wasn't updated. There were little quirks in it that made it hard to compete. Now, this house got tons of showings. We didn't even really get a ton of negative feedback, honestly. There just were a lot more houses in this price range that people were looking at. I could pull up the listing and I could see that there were at least 12 houses that were 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this general vicinity next 2-3 miles. Of course, you're gonna have a tough time selling that. So what we suggested two things. You can either fight them on price or you can fight them on value and features. And we decided to fight them on value and features. And with this home, we suggested a deep clean. So we did a deep clean, deodorize and purify the air. The owner had pets that they used to have in the property that whenever they moved out, it still had this kind of dander and smell. And then also a repaint of some aspects of the home to really modernize the feel. This cost them less than $1,000. And we have now sold it for the exact list price. And these are things you got to do if you want to sell in this type of market. And we haven't even gotten to the point where the inventory is insanely high. We haven't gotten to the point where prices are dropping dramatically. So there may be more of this happening. So it's either add value or lower your price. But you want to be as proactive and as aggressive as possible as a seller as opposed to the one sitting on the market. So to summarize it, is Texas in trouble? Not exactly, right? But it's not as stable as things look either. The market isn't crashing, okay? But certain cities are experiencing major shifts. Cities like Austin, and these could be cautionary tales to look for. But it's really going to depend on the job market, the economy, and a couple of other factors. But lucky for you, we talked about exactly that in this video right here.